Okay, this is the last of the JavaScript videos and tutorials. Scroll down to the lesson. It's going to be 11.4. I'm going to go to the link provided in 11.4, and we're going to look at lesson 5 using JavaScript to hide and show content. So we created a clock that is displayed in a screen when we first load it up, and then it's displayed on the screen all the time. Now we're gonna be putting in some additional code, just like we did before, to change it to look like a better looking clock. This is something similar. It consists of some CSS, like the one that we use to give us the last version, the one we have right now, and we're gonna be adding one more function. So we will be able to use CSS to hide and display the content. We're gonna build a button basically that's gonna say turn off, turn on. And we'll use JavaScript to do that by changing the CSS properties. So I'm going to go to my GitHub page and load up the last thing that we did. I'm going to my repository. We're in week 15. Week 15 will show me the 2 pages that we worked on for the previous projects, and new clock's the one that I want. I'm not going to make any changes to new clock. Instead, I'm going to copy the code that's in this file, the whole thing. Copy that and go back, and I'm going to create a new file. Create new file, and let's just call this one, let's call it clock button .html, because we have HTML code. I'll go down to the editor, and I can either press Ctrl V or just right click and say paste. I guess it's going to be Ctrl V. Yes, so here is the code. If I were to run this from this page, that's what I would expect to see. Would be the same thing that we did with the new clock. But so that we move quicker, let's go. I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to go to CodePen. If you want to log into your account so you can save the file, by all means do. I'm just going to start coding because I'm going to go back and save it in GitHub anyway. So my setup is already very much like I had it the last time. It's on the left. If you don't see HTML, CSS, and JavaScript on the left, you can change the view and click the layout that works best for you. I'm going to minimize the JavaScript, even though we're putting in JavaScript into the code. We're not going to use a separate window. We're adding CSS to the code, but I'm not going to use a separate window. Everything is in one file. I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste again, since I still have the code in memory. And I'm going to see the clock just like I did before. So this is my working page. It's still there. Let's go back to the instructions and what we're doing. So we're opening up the file. We've renamed it for different assignments, but it's javascript.html is the one we started with. But now we're going to have a new file called button clock, or clock button. I just forgot what I called it, but it's that file that we created in GitHub. So clock button. Let's see what else we need to do. We need to go into the style sheet, and we have only one file, so we don't have a CSS file. We created, and we're going to look for the div clock in the CSS coding. We're going to add a property, and that's a display property. We're going to say that the display is going to be none. So basically, it's like saying, use the alphabet, but display the alphabet, but don't show me any letters. We're displaying nothing. I'm going to copy that, go back to my CodePen, and find in my coding the style section. I'm going to scroll down. Here's the end of the script, and here's the beginning of the style, the div clock, where I aligned the text to the center. We did different colors, etc. Right where the bracket starts, I'm going to click right on the right of it, press enter. This is the first line of the CSS. I'm going to press Ctrl V to paste, and the display is none. And the consequence is, as predicted by the lesson, is that If everything is working properly, the clock should no longer be visible, and indeed the clock is gone, and that's because we've just told it to display nothing. What we're going to be doing then is going to be adding a button that's going to allow us to click to turn off this this particular state of the page. Is it on? Is it off? So we're going to change the property to make the element visible again. We're going to change the none to block. So what kind of display? Rather than having no display at all, we're going to have block display. And we've talked about block display before. It basically is just something that will allow us to show images and elements horizontally on a page, and there it is. I'll go back to the lesson. In this case, we want to make this element visible only if the user specifically requests it. So we're going to add an event in the code that will be triggered using JavaScript. So the element that we're using, we're just going to create a button. This is just straightforward HTML. We're going to create a button that's going to have this event toggle right here, that whenever somebody clicks on the button, then it's going to load up a new function called toggle clock, and it's going to show us the clock at that moment. So this is just a button that we're creating, and it's going to have the text show clock in it. I'm going to highlight and copy all of this code, and like I said, this is straight up HTML. So I'm going to scroll down and look at where the HTML begins, and it starts right here, the body, and the body loads up the clock and it keeps it displaying, and then we have this division that is actually the clock right there, ID clock. So I'm going to put it before the code, so I'm going to go right to the beginning of the left angle bracket, press enter. I'm going to press the up cursor key to go to the previous line, and I'm going to press Control V to paste the button that I just copied. And so that you can see this a little bit better, I'm going to expand this window. Since the clock is not that big, I'm going to see it on the right side anyway. So now I have my code that has changed the display to be block, and we have added a button with the button element that whenever a click happens, it's going to change the state. Now if I click that button right now, nothing happens. So what's going on is that it's calling for a function that doesn't exist. I even see a little error down here, but that's okay because we just haven't gotten to that stage. So we have to add the toggle clock function. The lesson provides us with the function. I'm going to copy all of this and paste it onto the page. So basically this function gets the name toggle clock, and it's going to get the current value of the clock's display property. So is it on or off? It's going to go and check on that, and depending on whether it's on or off, it will then tell us to either show the clock or hide the clock. And it does this through a series of if-then statements. So let's copy this code, only what's in the square, right click and copy, and if I go back to my code pen and I go all the way to the top where I have my function, I have my first function, the one that actually shows the clock, function update time. I'll scroll down to find the end of that function, and I know that it's going to be over when the script appears, the end script. I'm going to put in a couple of spaces in there, pressing enter, so that I can paste using Control V as in Victor the code that I just copied. So now my clock is still running. My show clock is turned on because it still doesn't really know if it's on or off, but I clicked it and it switches to hide clock. I'm going to hide clock then, and now my button says show clock, hide clock. The JavaScript is hiding and showing the clock as we requested. So now that this is working, I think that that is the end of this. It's all done. So in order to turn this in for a grade, make sure that this code that you worked on CodePen, I'm going to press Control A to select all, Control C to copy, or you can right click copy. And the that new file that we created, clock button. Here, let's click in the space, the editing space, press Ctrl A to select everything. I'm gonna delete it, pressing the backspace, pressing Ctrl V, and that pastes it. Once it's pasted, I'm going to commit this new file. That'll save it. It takes me back to the directory. I have the clock button right here. I'll click on it just to see what my address is going to be. It's going to be my username.github.io/week15/clock button. I'm going to right click on that and tell it to go to it. So, okay, well, let's wait just a little bit and reload. And here's my clock button page, and it's showing me the clock. I'll click on the button just to make sure that it's all loaded, and then I can hide the clock, show the clock, etc. And hopefully the next time that I come and visit, it will just start out by giving me the correct button verbiage. And so that's it. When you are done with the project and it's visible on your URL, make sure that you copy this URL, your username.github.io/week15clockbutton.html, and turn that in for a grade for 11.4. And that's it for JavaScript for now.